These words are by former President Jimmy Carter. I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. I'm free to choose what that something is, and the something I have chosen is my faith. Now, my faith goes beyond theology and religion and requires considerable work and effort. My faith demands, this is not optional, my faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have to try to make a difference. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, and neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them.
We have been blessed this morning with many candles lit in joy. We rejoice with Karen Lincoln's daughter, Astra, and wish her great success following her move to Switzerland to work on her master's in anthropology at the Geneva Postgraduate Institute. Since our most recent heat wave subsided a week and a half ago, the weather has been so consistently kind, balmy, sunny, and beautiful that one gets lulled. The equinox is coming this week. The chilly nights and cool mornings, not to mention the daily news, foreshadow the truth that is to come, cold days and long nights ahead of us. We can take comfort in the love and support for one another found in this community, reaching out to those whose path today feels rocky. The flowers today are in dedication to Lloyd Dickinson's mother, who recently made her transition. We also make note of Bill Buchanan's best friend's daughter-in-law, who has been diagnosed with lymphoma and must spend 3 to 4 weeks at the Roseville Kaiser undergoing chemotherapy. Healing thoughts and prayers are expected, requested, helpful. And also, there's a note that one of us is thinking of Mark Allen, the son of a dear friend who's absent from his family on his birthday, and wishing that he return home safely. It is a great help knowing that this congregation is there for us, that people care when we are struggling, and can be real and helpful when times are hard. And times are hard. Just listen to a typical newscast on any typical night or morning. News items like estranged boyfriend shoots his ex and her 10-year-old and her 18-month-old too, and then walks away. Some psycho opens fire on innocent bystanders or mows down workers at a former workplace, or children at a school. A young person of color is slain during a routine traffic stop. A suicide bomb attack spreads mayhem and destruction. In case you did not notice, it seems to be getting worse, and the longer we pretend it isn't, makes it even worse. When we turn away, avert our glance, pass over to the other side. I know one thing, wrote Mohandas Gandhi late in his life. Those of you who have not learned how to serve will not find happiness. For therein lies our salvation and the transformation of our world. Finding a way, each of us in our own little way, to help someone, to make a difference. Demagogues threaten us with vengeful second comings. But the only second coming Unitarian Universalism proclaims is a transformation of the heart. Lord, when did we see thee hungry and feed thee, or thirsty and give thee drink? And when did we see thee a stranger and welcome thee, or naked and clothe thee? And when did we see thee sick or in prison and visit thee? From the beginning of time comes the answer. Truly I say unto you, as you did it to the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. The nights grow long, the days short, and forecasters predict that this week the wind will blow colder and colder still in the months ahead. We must warm ourselves from within by the fire of our hearts, the fire of service to others. They are reaching out. Today they are reaching for us, as every day, as always. It is only when we reach back that the day spring starts to break and the shadows flee away. And now let us share silence together. This morning I want to preach a sermon on what makes for a great church. We're kicking off what ought to be an upbeat, vigorous period here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Livermore, with multiple opportunities to become a healthier, stronger community, to refine some of our systems, and eventually, and there's no real great rush on this, but eventually, probably sometime during 2018, or the spring of 19, but it could be 20. It's not so important that you rush, but that you get all the steps in order. Eventually, call a new minister. In conjunction with your search, the congregation will, again, most likely in 2018, embark on a major self-survey. So things are clearly in transition. Consequently, today is a good time to ask, what are we doing here? What are we trying to do? And the other thing, last week I talked a little about who I am or where I'm coming from, so now I want to talk about what anyway, and I hope I can enlist all of you to join me, what I am aiming at. So what done looks like. If you're trying to re-engineer something, you have to get a clue what you're shooting for, what you're aiming at. Let me take this morning to tell you what I think we're doing here, or at least trying to do, to nurture and keep alive a thriving, creative, truly liberal Unitarian Universalist congregation here in the Tri-Valley area. Well, what is the key? What are the keys to such a community? What will enable our efforts to flourish and thrive? I think there are 4 ingredients, 4 dimensions. When I started thinking about this years ago, the image that initially came to mind was that of a 4-cylinder internal combustion engine. An engine in which, when it's functioning properly, all 4 pistons are moving smoothly and in sync. Well, it could be 6. I have a car with 5 cylinders. But when I started thinking about this, I had an old 122S Volvo with 4. So that idea that I was constantly trying to keep in running order with it functioning and the cylinders in sync, and it sounded right. A few years later, in the early 1990s, I came across the image on the cover of today's bulletin, or order of service, discovered in a book by the Reverend Richard Gilbert, Dick Gilbert, Minister Emeritus of the Rochester, New York First Unitarian Church. And some of you may have taken over the years Building Your Own Theology class. That was written by Dick Gilbert. He's one of the more distinguished elders of my peers, colleagues. So today I will employ the mechanical four-cylinder engine metaphor some, but mostly Reverend Gilbert's wheel image throughout my remarks this morning. The four-cylinder engine model makes sense in that automobiles have many parts and many subsystems that all need to be in proper tune for the engine to run smoothly. From time to time, one subsystem, the electrical system, something about the timing or what have you, gets out of whack. So the mechanic, the minister, tinkers with things until he or she gets it all running smoothly again, at which time some other part could probably use her or his attention. When everything's working perfectly, even if only for a short time, the congregations can really hum. People are joining, programs expanding, and the coffers are full. A good minister keeps at it without too much anxiety, believing that his or her hard work will eventually bear fruit. But like the good mechanic, one has to keep paying attention by checking in, listening, and keeping everything well oiled. Now let us consider Dick Gilbert's wheel. At the center, worship and the celebration of life. Now, worship is one of those words that some Unitarian Universalists struggle with. But the etymology of the word, as I understand it, is worthship. Worthship. The act of making or remaking worthy. Archaeologists and anthropologists describe the content of ancient worship as ritual and dance. This is where religion probably began, celebrating shared joy with song and music, most likely around a campfire. The single most frequently mentioned aspect in common among growing churches of all denominations and types is that they are festive. They celebrate. Coming-of-age ceremonies, honoring elders, anniversaries of important congregational milestones. What are we celebrating when we do this? Ultimately, our connection to one another and our connectedness to the rest of life and humanity. The great turn-of-the-century Oxford classicist Jane Ellen Harrison used to quote Aeschylus in claiming that ritual is one of humanity's three great inventions: fire, habitations, and ritual or worship. So fire, the domestication of fire, the building of dwellings, and ritual, the three great inventions of ancient man. A people's educational and cultural values are passed on in worship by way of ritual. Worship then celebrates our connectedness to each other, to the culture in which we reside, and also to something even deeper. There's an ancient myth that gives us a clue to the deeper connections that rituals can and sometimes do get us in touch with. And there are many iterations of this myth, but I'm going to share one from Egypt, the myth of the Mad King. The story goes like this. Once upon a time, a great sovereign sends his child on an important secret mission. The youth is to go to Egypt, blend in, mingle with the people, and await further instructions. And so the young person obeys, journeying abroad to that ancient land, finding a place to live and to trade, and settling down. To become fully integrated into the life there, the child learns the Egyptian language, makes friends, finds a spouse, and starts a family. Moreover, life is good. In time, our hero all but forgets about the mission. Indeed, were it not for occasional dreams and vague memories, she would have forgotten altogether. It goes on like this for some time until one evening on her way home, a man in uniform introduces himself as an emissary from her father, the king. "It is now time for you to return home," he explains. "Follow me." Confused by the abruptness and unexpectedness of the encounter, she dismisses the man, but then moments later, retracing her steps in search of him, discovers he has vanished. Except for, is it his business card lying there on the street? A note on the back of which reads, "Your heart knows the way. Follow it home." The ancient world organized social life to ensure that we all got word from our homeland and started back to regain our rightful throne. The process is called initiation. Initiation into our deeper mind, our collective unconscious, or to use the Unitarian Ralph Waldo Emerson's term, into our true self, capital S, self. Some years ago, while serving a church in suburban Pittsburgh, I led an adult RE program, the Canticle of the Cosmos, in which we watched and discussed a 12-part video series narrated by the mathematical cosmologist Brian Swimme. In it, Swimme describes the human condition in the language of cosmology, quantum mechanics, biological science, and some traditional wisdom. The Earth, he explains, is an intelligent, self-regulating planet, and we, human beings, are products of the Earth. So let us for a moment compare Swimme's image with the more familiar one we all have, the biblical image that most of us grew up with, and this other Swimme image in accordance with the understanding of modern cosmology and quantum physics and the work of other scientists. Some of them, incidentally, who were quite open to the mystical ideas that also informed the transcendentalists like Emerson, Margaret Fuller, Walt Whitman, and the rest. The old image of human beings is that of heaven-sent strangers who, after suffering nobly through this mortal coil, are released, if they've been good, to return to their rightful throne in heaven. But this image is hopelessly out of date. For the truth is, we do not come into this world at all. We come out of it. The new image of humanity is as a natural product of the earth. For indeed, our earth is peopling. Just as the apple tree apples, just as the vine grapes, our earth is peopling. If we are intelligent beings, then we are the products of an intelligent earth, symptomatic of an intelligent energy system. For one doesn't gather figs from thistles or grapes from thorns. Some people, I suppose, never come to this insight. Others do, but uncertain and unsupported in its meaning, dismiss it. Nevertheless, it can be nurtured. And that's what worship is all about, nurturing our connections, including the deep internal connection we all have to the creative heart of life, to the self, the still small inner voice, the heart of hearts, the Atman that is Brahman, the still point at the seat of one's soul. Say something spiritual. I am forever being petitioned. Something intellectually stimulating, something that's hopeful, that's emotionally honest, and oh yes, up to date, and don't go over 20 minutes. All this I do try to do every week. All ministers try to do this. But whatever we say, a priori, it has to touch the well springs, or folks will eventually find something else to do on their Sunday mornings. So, worship and celebration are at the center, at the very heart of what we do, the taproot. The outer circle, however, is just as important. Note that in this image of a healthy church, all four components of a strong, vital congregation touch each other, touch each of the other three. In other words, all these aspects of congregational life link with one another, influence one another, and connect to the other three. What does this mean? Consider the second element of a healthy church is that it is a caring community. Members support one another, take care of one another in crisis, and behave like, often as, a group of loving friends. Here at UUCIL, you have a good caring and concerns committee. Indeed, you have done and are doing a pretty good job organizing yourselves to look after one another, make calls from time to time on shut-ins, and filling in the gap between the Get Well Soon card and a visit from the minister at the hospital. But a truly caring community also means being non-judgmental and understanding of another's views, ideas, and within reason, lifestyle. Healthy congregations are communities where we nourish one another despite our political differences, bind up the wounds of our defeats, and share our joys, both personal and social. In 1983, the Rochester Unitarian Church voted 156-1 to endorse the nuclear freeze. In a newsletter column, Reverend Gilbert wrote the next week, note to a minority of one, he paid tribute to the woman, apparently everyone knew who she was, who had cast the dissenting vote. Her courage, Dick wrote, serves to remind the majority that conscience counts for something in liberal religion. The caring and the ethical are one, as we see in the image where they touch one another. For as I pointed out earlier, all four components of a healthy church are interrelated and interconnected. The third piston in our well-tuned congregational engine is religious education. Now, by religious education, I mean more than just Sunday school. I mean lifespan community of religious learning and growth. The main ingredient here is attitude. I'm reminded of a self-portrait at age 80 by the Spanish Romantic painter and printmaker Francisco de Goya. It shows the aged artist walking with two canes and is entitled, I Am Still Learning. Francisco de Goya's attitude is the attitude we seek to foster here, an attitude that we can still learn and that we can learn to see a religious dimension in all the situations that we are learning about. Moreover, we can help one another model this attitude for our children and youth and for new people coming in, and include our young people and new people in the other aspects of congregational life, in our celebrations and in our social justice projects. Here, social justice is the fourth component of a healthy church: moral discourse and action. A few years back, I co-taught a class at one of our UU summer institutes in Bethany, West Virginia. The class was titled Social Action in the Local Congregation. One of our participants, Carolyn, was a strong UU from one of the Ohio Meadville District's ritzier suburban congregations. At the week's beginning, Carolyn was adamant in her conviction that social action only created divisions within congregations. By the week's end, she felt completely different. The problem at her home church, as she eloquently expressed the last day, was that the social activists tended to act independently, off on their own. What she wanted was for them to be in dialogue with the whole congregation, so that everybody was talking about how to be better, more wholesome people, and helping each other learn new ways to be better people. Now, Carolyn's initial feelings, I must add, were not totally off base. Too many UU congregations are somewhat politically knee-jerk and not safe, really, for those who don't share the majority view or are evolving that way, but not there yet. But today I'll talk about that as time goes on, but I'm not going to talk about the ways in which our congregations fall short too often. I'm talking here this morning about something else, about religious communities that are not indoctrinating or neutral, and not political propaganda stations for the latest social action fad either. To be a true church, the church must seek to penetrate the political order with justice, but at the same time, it must not itself be co-opted into any political party or social movement. Any church worth its name will include ethical reflection as a central part of its raison d'etre, of its reason to be. In such a congregation, moral discourse is carried on in pew and pulpit, classroom and coffee hour, in the office and seminar. It draws on historical for instances of ethical reflection and behavior, and it delineates the moral traditions in which we, as Unitarian Universalists, stand, or a Baptist would do it within their tradition, or the Jews within theirs. But here we have a strong, wholesome social justice tradition, and we need to be aware of it so that we can faithfully live out our religion. Well, how do we get there? How do we focus and continually refocus our energies here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Livermore so that we're running on full horsepower and in perfect tune? Let me propose the following. 1, remember to keep Sunday morning celebrative and worshipful. I've heard from a few people who have shared with me some of their hopes for worship here on Sunday during the coming year or two. I must tell you, I have been flattered, really, to be engaged by these folks so earnestly, so quickly. Not everyone has agreed completely with the modest changes I've made already to the order of service, and I'll make some more. So, others have said they like them. Either way, the passion of people who've said they like them and the others who said, what are you doing? Anyway, either of them, that passion has forced me or has encouraged me to articulate as clearly as I can my understanding of what worship in a liberal church is designed to do. And I'll do that next Sunday, or not next Sunday, 2 Sundays, because next Sunday is a lay-led service, but on October 1st, I'll do on the value of ritual and what actually worship at its heart can do in our tradition. But today I just want to say our charge, what we can do to be the healthiest possible. Keep worship celebrative, because UUs have just the message, I believe, and just the sacred circle in which to help others find celebration in their own hearts and in their own lives and families and world. Second, whatever else we do here, let us always strive to care for one another, even the one among us with an iconoclastic point of view. Third, we have to keep our commitment to religious education high for all of us, but especially for our young people. And finally, We have to be comfortable recognizing that there is an ethical dimension to every decision we make. Let this place be one where we can struggle together to figure out what the most moral choices would be in the decisions confronting us, and to support one another in making them and following through with our decisions. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Livermore, we are well on our way. This is a pretty good church. Doesn't say it couldn't be better, but I feel fortunate to come and not be looking at a train wreck that I've got to get fixed. And I've had to do that. No train wreck here, but we can get this place even more better. In the wake of the current administration's increasingly bellicose foreign policy and its embrace of racist, neo-fascist fellow travelers, we will have to be focused and very determined, wise as serpents and gentle as doves, if we want to articulate clearly an alternative message, one that's radical and caring, liberating and wholesome, regarding what congregational and national political life is or can be all about. Please, over the coming months, won't you join me in nurturing that model to fruition here in Livermore? Thank you. And may it be so. Shalom, namaste, blessed be.